So the first Excel clan got support from the standard deck sets. You best believe I was going to dabble with that. Harri is a multi-attack deck that focuses on multiple rearguards coming out of the soul. There are 2 variants that Harri is known for the stage and also the Harri G. In this deck build, we'll be focusing on Harri G to take advantage of multiple Excel circles, thanks to the history collection strat giving you 2 right off the back on turn 3. And then of course extending with Darklord Princess into Yvette, giving you another Excel circle as well the next turn. We also have phenomenal strides such as Harri Stride, Leontina, Dust, and even having access to phenomenal GRs such as like Maja. If you do play the lovely Companion too, with these cards you're able to get into calling cards such as Gruesome Scythe Dragon or Tricky Assistant during your opponent's battle phase, causing a disruptive play. This deck would also utilize cards to help further extend attack, in combination coming out to Sept, but also putting them back into Sept for later on to come back out. Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders. They're great quality products that are anime based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase. Real quickly, I want to give massive shout outs to both Derek Dow and Kevin Cho for being phenomenal players with Harri, and I've learned a lot from just playing against them over the years in tournaments and too. And just from playing against them, I learned a lot about how to play Harri. There's also a limited amount of content on YouTube that's more recent when it comes to Harri, in premium at least, but I do want to give shout outs to both Robbie Cole, Derek Dow, and then also mail it to Matt for providing content so that's more recent too. Also, go support Matt too, because he's so close hitting the 1K mark. He's already making standard Pale Moon content too as well. So if you're already a Pale Moon fan, definitely recommend a sub. Starting off with the grade 3s, we are playing 3 copies of Harri G, and that's it. I've actually tried at 4 at first, but with room being so tight, especially trying to fit with playsets of Crest Givers and grade 2s promo, I felt like 3 was just fine. We also play the Masquerade grade 1 bunny in D series, so you could directly search for the Harri from deck or drop, which is convenient. And so it's really used to have that history collection play, but also having the magia ability. This with the Crest will have 2 cards go into the end turn to be able to draw a card, and so you could take advantage of that. But also the GR Maja, you could actually use her skill to bring out something from the soul onto a rearguard circle, which gives you direct access to Gruesome Scythe Dragon or Tricky Assistant. Again, since your Vanguard has the Magia ability. The Break Straight skill is nice from time to time, but it just depends if you do need to start building up a soul and also calling things out. And then if it ever comes up, if you're in the late game with the GB2 skill, you can actually pretty finish games with it because it can actually call something during the battle phase, and if everything's plus 35k or plus, it's still going to hurt for the opponent. You could also try having the stage variant, and you could even include a Nightmare Doll package in there with Nightmare Doll Alice, but also Leslie's to take advantage of the stage and have a restander on top of that as well. So there's a couple directions you can go with that. 1 copy of Gruesome Scythe Dragon, so this is really your disruptive play card that you want in Soul as soon as possible. We do have methods of searching this directly from the deck and putting it into Soul, which I'll highlight in the grade 2s. But having this card specifically, this card does not choose. It actually lets you choose a column, and essentially the rearguards are not chosen. So you get around Resist, you get around cards like Arjula, Honoly, for example, which against like Granblue is very vital, and any other decks that want to use these types of cards. It can be annoying for your opponents just to even do their... You can even include playing Tricky Assistant alongside with this, or just switch to the Tricky Assistant. It's totally up to you. Again, I was trying to find space too. Both of them have their merits too. The only thing that I liked about Gruesome Dragon over Tricky Assistant was that it didn't cost a CB. This lets you discard a trigger to do its effect, where it's a 2 for 2 essentially, but you still have your CB and your soul available for your other cards. Plus, I found myself like choosing between the two is that Gruesome Dragon just came up more easily. And again, it depends on the resources that you have. For the rest of the grade 3s that are 1-offs, essentially 1 Nightmare Doll Alice, 1 Chimera, and 1 Forbidal. And essentially, you wanted rearguards to help facilitate either attacks, resources, just help the deck be cohesive in that sense too. Plus, you also need grade 3s to ditch for the history collection stride to pay the cost of stride. And I'm still a little iffy on Forbidal. I'll give you some options in a bit. The gist of Nightmare Doll Alice is that it attack extends during the battle phase. I found myself that outside of the Vanguard, if I had a rearguard that could continually call the rearguard, then I can get more attacks and take advantage of the crap. Not only you having 2 to 3 Excel circles, it makes room to easily call them to separate rearguard circles and call more units on top of that too, which I'll cover in the grade 2s as well. This also has great synergy with the purple trapezes too. Chimera there is one of those cards where I need a big picture, a counter charger, and also something to put into Soul. And so what I mean by counter charger, I've realized that Pale Moon doesn't necessarily have their own version of Granade compared to like Granblue. So you have to kind of mitigate with different units that counter charge and moderate your CB along the way. So as long as you didn't counter charge just yet, he'll give you a counter charge back at least for that turn. You can also shove other cards such as Purple Trapezes or Misdirections and other cards to continue combos with Nightmare Doll Alice. In a sense, you'll be resetting the loop with Nightmare Doll Alice. The basic combo is using Nightmare Doll Alice to pull out purple trapezes pull out back Nightmare Doll Alice, and then also Misdirection coming back out. And so with the combination of this, you can shove purple trapezes, reloop it again later on, and also purple trapezes can shove a Misdirection back and seize the timing as well. So I will demonstrate that in combos too. It'll be a lot easier. But both these cards in tandem are great Forbital targets, and that's why I'm trying out Forbital and seeing if I like it or not. You could also revive cards from the drop as well, so in case you damage check or something, you can still have access to them. The other grade 3 to consider will be Applause Dragon that just came out too. This lets you soul charge from the drop, and it's also a bit of a beater too, so I think this card would be good in cases where you don't get the crest and you realize that you really lack some power. So having a card like that might be more valuable in those instances. Lastly, for the grade 3s, we have grade 3 heals. So essentially, I was playing the 3-1 ratio with the counter charger or soul charge that you need depending on what you need. I found you need to survive the early game. Harri doesn't really have the greatest early game, and that's one of the weaknesses I feel that can be holding it back to. So just having these in the early game will help you survive, but also then with the Manja G-Guard, you can take advantage of G-Guard into your Gruesome Scythe Dragon. Onto the grade 2s, we're playing 4 copies of the Knife Strike Pardos, and so this is the grade 2 V promo tops 5 for grade 2 or less when you're a grade 1 or less Vanguard. This is a playset because, again, you want to maximize on getting the crest. It's that important. From time to time, you can use its boost skill to actually superior call something during the battle phase to help further extend attack, but more than likely, you'll be relying on Nightmare Doll Alice, but if you don't have that, then you can use this card as a backup too. We have 3 copies of Dancing Princess of the Night Sky, so this card is really phenomenal. This is kind of like your column bar that you want to write on turn 2. You want to search selectively the card that you want to soul charge. What's really odd about this card is that it's grade 2 or less, so you really have a limited option of soul charging. It's also 8k base, so it's not the greatest, but in tandem with 3 Toge, you are essentially able to get to the grade 3s as well. So whenever this is soul charged by your ability, you can get a grade 3 from your deck or a drop and put it into your soul. So this helps also grab your grade 3s in case they hit the drop zone. This gets your Gruesome Scythe Dragon immediately too, or your Nightmare Doll Alice, or your Chimera. Just depends what you need. There's a combo with this that essentially on turn 2, you use this to get Cat and High Boots immediately, and then on your turn 3, assuming that you have an extra CB with the Clifford Stride, you don't have to use Harri's Stride skill. You could actually call this out with Cat and High Boots, build a field with 2 rearguards already, and then search Toge to get the grade 3 that you're missing. So you still set up pretty well while setting up your main phase as well, which I'll highlight that a bit in the combos too. With Toge, you can also use your G-Guards too, like the Jester Chimera, for example, from hand into soul. The Magia ability too as well, so you pull this out with Harri or with Cat Knight, so eventually the Magia ability will put them back into soul, and then this could bind itself to actually get that grade 3 at the end phase, which is pretty nice timing to set up lastly. Lastly, for the grade 2s, we're playing 2 Misdirection. So this is a card that I really enjoy playing. So before Crest, this card will essentially create columns that can be 14k essentially and hit if your opponent hasn't had a damage trigger. This is a way to poke more damage in those game states. However, thanks to the Crest, this easily becomes 13, 18, 23, 33, 43, and so on as you get farther into the game. This is really annoying for your opponent because it's just another attack and it comes from soul, so it doesn't have to be in the field just yet. So you're not as susceptible to disruptive plays, and so whenever they do something to you, you can at least have your Vanguard pull out something, and then when it comes out, this can come out as an additional attacker. So it's really flexible. Again, with the purple Chappies combo and Nightmare Doll Alice, you can extend 3 attacks pretty easily, and I'll show that in the comments. Some other options for the grade 2s you can think of, like Flying Harrington, for example, but there's a restriction with that with purple Trapezes, so be mindful of that. There's the new Jacqueline grade 2 for the right line for Harri from the deck set that you can play. I've seen Robbie's friends play that too, just to help with like consistency if you ride on top of it. It's also a mina beater too, to make some numbers a little bit better too, especially on your first try turns, if not moving forward too. One thing to note is that it does have a slow start just like Granblue too, so that's why you utilize cards such as like Dancing Princess, and that's why I see even cards like Jacqueline be like even more important, so that way you're setting up as quickly as possible too. So for Crest Giver, this gives you the crest. You want to play maximum copies, that's really it. You can call this as a booster, so it can be an attacker in its sense, or just be soul fodder that you want to shove into soul. So it's not totally useless in your hand. One of my favorite grade 1s is Purple Trapezes. So this is very simple. When it's placed on rearguard, shove another rearguard into soul and call something out that isn't a Purple Trapezes. At first I thought it had to come from soul to do the skill, because it's like an old school card. I'm thinking like Granblue days, like King Serpent, where it has to be called from the drop first to get its skill. But no, you can just call this from hand. You can call this from anywhere and it just does its skill. So it's great to set up your main phase, so that way your battle phase looks phenomenal too. And during your battle phase, it just extends attack for free. There's no Soul Blast, no Counter Blast. You're just shoving something else to shove something out and then go bananas from there. 2 copies of the Masquerade Bunny D. So this is the D series one because this makes it easier to just search directly to the Harry. This is important because if you use the G version of this card, you would have to call it a rare. And I found that when I was playing the stage version of Harry a while back, it just kind of sat there after the fact, which was not the best usage of that. So I'd rather just discard one, grab something, and now I can just dictate how my field would look like at that point too. And again, this actually will grab a Harry from the drop as well. Worst case scenario, it's a Stride fodder if you don't get the crest too, which is still appreciated. 2 Darkstar Mirror Masters. So again, you needed ways to countercharge. This is also a 10k shield as a grade 1 if you notice that a lot of the other cards are 5k shields, which is rough. So just having some 10k shields is appreciative, and access to your G-Guard plays help you survive. But again, you need to have some countercharge. So this card can help countercharge or refund your massive field calls during the battle phase 2 as well. This can also be a free body if you use Harry's Stride skill. So it just refunds the counter blast immediately just to have an extra body and soul charge as well. And then early game, this is even encouraged to help you guard early because it'll actually put itself into soul if it's guarded on Guardian Circle too. 1 Sanctitude, it's just really needed in this meta again. I don't think that's really much to explain with Sanctitude. That's it for the grade 1. Some other additional options you may want to consider, which I have, was Lovely Companion. So I feel like Lovely Companion forced you to play a card like Red Star, so it's another card that you had to add to get to a disruptive play. But with that and the G-Guard, you can have multiple ways of just having access to that. So it's not only you just had to heal, if you even have Lovely Companion in hand, then you're good to go. There's also combos you can do with the G-Guard Wandering Dragon to pull out the Lovely Companion from Soul and then use its GB2 skill that way too. But then you could also just go directly into Maja because you have 2 Maja anyway. I felt like since this deck has a lot that it's trying to accomplish, just having even more extra cards was starting to make it more fragile too. But you can definitely maximize on that. And if you do play the stage Harry, then Lovely Companion is really your only way to do the disruptive play without costing you so much. There's also another PG that costs like a counterblast, but you want to avoid that too, if possible. You could also consider cards such as like Honoly too against multi-attack decks too. But I felt like since you have like cards like Gruesome Side Dragon, I think you'll be fine. Oh, one thing to note too is that if you do play the Lovely Companions, then you can at least deal with an opposing dust turn. So if you're facing the Harry Mare match or even a Grig or Gare Chronicle or Spikes that goes into dust, you're grade 1, so you cannot G-Guard. So you still have the Harry name, so Lovely Companion will still work. So for the grade 0s, it is important as your starter to be Happiness Collector. This works with a crest, you have to have the name. V series recommended, so you get to draw and the ticket shield. The other grade 0 is Cat Knight and High Boots. So at first this card seemed kind of like, why would you play this card? It just seems like extra fodder. It's just another card that you have to put into Soul. It's not that great on its own. But as you start playing this deck, you realize that like, okay, if there's a way to build a field for free essentially. And then also what I realized with this interaction is that because it's Magia, it also takes a unit out of the Soul with the Magia restriction, so both that unit and Cat Knight will go back into Soul by themselves. So now you don't have to worry about meeting that condition with other cards, and then you get to draw from the crest at the end of the turn, which is actually really nice. This is all for free too, so as soon as you place a Vanguard onto your Vanguard circle, he triggers to come out from Soul. This is also key because if you do the stride with Darklord Princess into maybe like Yvette for example, this can come out by himself too to extend more attacks. And again, if you have the crest power up, you're looking at anything that's like 20, 25 or even 30k power up on top of him probably being on an Excel circle, so he could be hitting over 30k pretty easily too as an attacker during the battle phase. But this also takes advantage of cards that are your already existing Soul, such as like your writing up cards, and that's where you can re-abuse the same Dancing Princess to get any other pieces with the guarantee of using the counterblast instead of hoping with Harry Stride skill and hope you soul charge something good. Now for the actual triggers for the Harry crit, this is really simply that, you know, goes into Soul, draw you a card. With the crest, it's interesting with Excel circles because typically with the crest they're 9k, but with the crest and the Excel circle combined, they're 14k on turn 3 already. So they hit it over 10k, grade 2s or anything like that's like 13k base later on too. And then obviously they'll get bigger too with the crest too, but it's really nice. And you realize that if you can put these immediately as attackers, they feel for your Soul because there are cards such as like Alice, Chimera, and so on that will just generically Soul Blast still, and you still need Soul fodder for that too. In addition to that, you have the GB1 crits, so both of them give power gains essentially to your strides too. So this will make your Darklord Princess more threatening, but also potentially your second Magia stride that you stride over. So just having more of these cards help too. And then for stride consistency, we are playing 2 stride crits. So again, you need to be able to stride because a lot of your grade 3s are either your Harrys or Riggers that you want to call onto Riggered Circle or put them into Soul. 3 PG draw. So I actually was playing Lovely Companion at first, and I just needed to make room for more stuff. So ultimately this goes into the triggers, and I feel like you still want a Perfect Guard. And at first I was a little bit hesitant with Perfect Guard. That's a draw. You're soul charging, you're also drawing a lot with this deck too, so you're kind of, you know, could deck out in the long term. But I found out it wasn't that big of an issue actually. In fact, I found this very appreciated because thanks to the Harri crit in this, you essentially have 7 draws defensively. This is what the deck actually needs to survive the early game as well. So that way you can actually get to your turn 3, turn 4 and like start steamrolling from there at that point. So this is super helpful. It also works just being on place. It doesn't have to be from hand. So you could G-Guard with Wandering Dragon and pull this out from soul if it so happens to be soul charged randomly. So you have a Perfect Guard that way. Lastly, an OT of your choice. I am playing with the Dark States one. I mean, just having the continual crit and plus 10k to Vanguard makes it really hard for your opponent to already deal with the big riggers that you're already having, but also just like a crit on a Vanguard on top of that is really annoying. And if you're doing double Vanguard turns, they have to deal with that twice too. So it's really annoying. Another card that you may want to consider is the other purple OT that actually heals the damage, but also lets you call something during the battle phase too. So it could help further extend attack. You just have to be conscious of Honoly plays too. So I felt like that's why like maybe this might be a little more flexible route. It just depends how the metagame shapes out. I'll quickly go into the G zone. So we're playing 1 Harmonics. Again, you need it for the tickets. Also unlocking can come up. We have other options to deal with that too. 2 Clifford, your Harri G. So you have access to the History Collection Stride. So you can get double XL Circle and Heal Call, a grade 2 or less. Just be mindful of that. So it's key to have cards like Purple Trapezes in the Salt if you can to further extend. I'll show a combo as well. 2 copies of Darklord Princess. I realized that you don't necessarily have to go into the third one as much, but you can have the third copy. This is your go-to because you're flipping more cards face up in the process too, which is really nice. And you also go into Yvette, which will actually give you another Excel circle on top of that too. Speaking of Yvette, and just like with the interaction with Darklord Princess, she strides a card that's face up. So you actually need fewer copies of other cards into the G zone that are Magia related. So that's why we only have 1 Yvette, because normally we just stride into it with Darklord Princess. And since it's face up, you can keep striding it technically with the Darklord Princess. This also gives the unit called out plus 15k, so that can come up more stage varying builds too if you want to maximize on a Leslie, for example, too. And then you have Masquerade Master Harri. So the prime reason that you play this card, not only that you can extend attacks during the battle phase, but you can actually card, not rearguards, but cards into your soul. This means select cards from, you know, facing Link Joker. So that's actually really helpful. I see typically play 3, but again, I'm messing with some ratios too. You can go back to 3. Again, same thing with Darklord Princess. As soon as you have a face up, you just restride that one. And then the second time you do it, you just flip the other copy that's face down too. And I felt like I wanted to make room for the new retrain of Dragon Masquerade Harri. So this has Magia, but it also gives you the ability to force soul charge opponent's rearguards that you don't want. This will still attack extend, and so you can still really maximize on that turn, but getting rid of pesky rearguard that you feel are worth it at this point too. So this is something I'm trying out. This also gets bypassed with discarding the grade 3 as Stride Fighter from the Darklord Princess Stride play too. She gets over that, so you don't have to worry about that. One Leontina, this literally shoves everything into Saw and then calls 2 for each one you did, so you can recall your entire field essentially, especially if you have more Excel circles, you have plenty of room. And as soon as that happens, your opponent has to call 2 cards each time they have to guard against for the rest of the turn. So this is pretty much a finisher at that point too. And another important finisher is Dust, which I will show both turns with Leontina and Dust too. But make sure opponent grade 1, they cannot use heals, get delta damage after 4 or less too. So it's pretty nasty. And at the same time, if you view it, their power is 1 instead of their typical base power. So you can see it as another like power up essence on top of the crest, making it very hard for your opponent to guard your attacks in general. Then we have the G-Guards with 2 Magia. I feel like 2 is very important because the one, you need it whenever you need to pop it, but the second one could come up if you need to do it again too. And what's really cool is Magia. So the Gruesome Scythe Dragon will go back into Saul or any other rearguard that you choose to call. So that way you can just reuse it for the next turn as well. Again, this doesn't work with the stage variant of Harri because it does not have Magia, so you'll get the other skill that just soul charges 3. This is allowed to reduce Jester Demonic Beast, Flexion Chimera, so it's almost like the same thing, but it has to have the opponent choose a standing unit to go into Soul if you put 2 cards into Soul yourself. This card can also be used as a good setup card because sometimes you'll go into your drive checks and you realize you draw into combo pieces that you rather have in the Soul. When you G-Guard, you can just shove those cards into Soul and they'll trigger effects if there's any like a Toge, for example, or just ready for the next turn. This is also a way to like trick like, oh, he drove track the Gruesome Scythe Dragon. Well, let me put it into Soul and see what you can do from there. 1 Cthulhu because it's, you know, decent shield, but also like just flips more cards face up in the G zone too. So if you know that you're going to finish them, why not just go for the power up and then also also one Wandering Dragon. As I mentioned before, you can call cards to Guardian Circles, such as like PGs. If you play the Lovely Companion, you can use her GB2 skill at the end of the battle for the Guardian, essentially to still trigger that play. So this card is still appreciated at that point too. It soul charges too, so you might never know. You soul charge something good and you're like, hey. An example for a stride play. On place, you could pull out Cat Knight and High Boot and Dancing Princess of the Night Sky. Use her skill to get Toga to get to Gruesome into the soul. This is binded. Depending what you have available, this can deviate. Call another Toga if you have one in hand. Use purple Trapezes to shove it into soul, call something else. Then trigger it. Get Comicality Chimera into soul that way. Any other combo pieces you have in hand, you call it. Misdirection. You can call another purple Trapezes, shove this into soul. Pull out the Comicality Chimera. You could also call triggers that go into soul. This is just an example field setup. The crest power up is 5k, so this will be 11 plus 5, so 16. This will be 18. Then you can use Chimera on attack, Soul Blast 1, your starter, for example. Shove purple Trapezes in soul. Get an additional 5k and countercharge since we have not countercharged. So 27. Vanguard attack. Any triggers apply to the remaining rearguards skill. Purple Trapezes. Shove Chimera back into soul and call it back out. You can call over with Misdirection if you want to get another attack in still. So this will be 13. Then 18 gets 2k as well from the stride. And then 22. And then this got the trigger, so 29. End of turn. Misdirection, Cat and High Boots, go back to soul. Draw you another card. Alternatively, you could have kept this into soul if your opponent gets a trigger as well. So just adjust according to the game state during that turn. For turn 4, these are key cards that you want to have ideally. Have a purple Trapezes in hand as well. These can be in the soul. This be in your hand. This could be in the field or hand. You also have gone into your history collection stride and G-guarded, so you're plus 15k to your crest. And you stride into Darklord Princess. You can use Cat and High Boots and pull out something else to help build the field more easily. If you have another Misdirection, just chilling, call it, and call any other bodies to help with your formation. An example play is that you can attack with the trigger first, again 15k, and it's Excel, so 9 plus 15, 24. 9 plus 15, 24. 13 plus 15, 28. You can attack with this if you want, but I save it for later. You'll see why. On attack, the crits will go into soul. Draw 2 cards and then give it plus 15k in this example. Do your drive check, triple drive, and any triggers on the standing rearguard, or if you're attacking directly, crit. Then use her skill to turn Yvette up face up and stride it as the new Vanguard. And on attack, her skill, you can shove another purple Trapezes into soul if you don't have one. Right, a third Excel circle, draw a card, flip something like any card. Call purple Trapezes from the soul. Absorb any other unit, in this case a Misdirection. Pull out Nightmare Doll Alice. You can superior call the same Misdirection because it sees it with the timing. If you have an additional one, you can call it as well over here. You have plus 25 with the crest now, right there. This gets an additional 15k because of Yvette. This will be 1 drive check. This is the weakest one. 8 plus 25 is 33. This will be 38. 26 plus 25, 51. Timing is key before you attack with Nightmare Doll Alice. If you only have 1 purple Trapezes, you can attack with this column, Soul Blast 1, and then shove the purple Trapezes into soul, and you'll countercharge as well. Now you could do Nightmare Doll Alice, and then at the end of the battle, Counter Blast, Soul Blast a card, go into soul, pop out purple Trapezes. You can shove one of the Misdirections back into soul. Pop out Nightmare Doll Alice again. Misdirection sees it. She comes out once more. And essentially you resetted 3 more attacks thanks to Nightmare Alice, Purple Trapezes, and Misdirection. 36, then 38, 42. Once more. Kind of bless 1. Soul Blast another card. Go back here. If you do have another Purple Trapezes, like I mentioned from hand, you can reloop it again. Bring it out. Misdirection comes out. You may have to call it over the other purple Trapezes if you want to get the Excel boot. 3 more attack. Nightmare Doll Alice once more. Back into soul. In this case, if you want to finish for another attack, you can pop out whatever you have left in soul. In this case, it will be Gruesome Scythe for the finish. So 18 plus 25, 43. That was a lot of attacks. Here's another turn 4 play. We're going to use Darklord Princess to go into the new Harri Crest. So assuming you have 3 face-up cards currently, you get plus 15 to the front row. Set up your board however you can, and you can attack accordingly. So 11 plus 15, 26. 15 plus 15, 30. 16 plus 15, 31. Attack with the Vanguard, triple drive. Any triggers apply accordingly. Flip the Harri stride onto it. Now you have another face-up card, so plus 20 now with the crest. This bypasses the discard of a specific grade 3 Harri. It's still stride, just FYI. You can use Calamity unboosted if you want. Soul Blast a card, and depending what you need, you can shove this into soul and countercharge. Then on attack, you can use the same counter blast, shove 2 rearguards, and then call 2. You want to do purple Trapezes for sure. You can use Comicality as well. Purple Trapezes. This is where it could come up where you choose 2 of your opponent's cards and shove them into Soul. Mainly the reason that you want to do this because it does require a counterblast, and also if you don't have any attack extensions. But in this case, we do with Purple Trapezes. Then you can shove another card. This will trigger as well. Call this. Misdirection comes out as well. You can shove any grade 3 because of the Toge. This is 1 drive. Again, 20k to the front row. So you can attack with the weakest. 28, 31. Chimera boosted this time. Soul Blast. Shove this into Soul. Nightmare Doll Alice. Kind of blast 1. Soul Blast. Bring out. Go into Soul. Pull out Purple Trapezes. Shove this into Soul. Pull out Nightmare Doll Alice. Misdirection pops out. And you kind of can see already to use another attack extension. Since we already have another one, you can call over these if you want. And then again, misdirection. And you get all these attacks stuff. So it can be used to get rid of pesky units and still have an absurd number of attacks with 20k to the front row for each attack. Your weakest unit is Purple Trapezes, so you have 11k. 11 plus 20 is 31. So against 11k Vanguard, that you still get over 2 triggers damage check. One way to get through Honoly is to get as many rearguards attacks before your Vanguard has to be the 5th battle. You can do this with 1 CB and then having Chimera inside Soul or in your hand, along with Purple Trapezes in the mix as well. You can have a booster, so you can attack with the weakest first, and then to the strongest that you can. And then your Vanguard, any drive checks can be stacked onto the booster still. So we got to heal, so put it on here. Do the skill and go into Yvette. This goes up. This will be the 6th battle and on attack her skill. Put Purple Trapezes in, get the additional circle, and you also increase another 5k in the crest. Flip something face up, draw a card. You can pull out Purple Trapezes, put something into the Soul to make way for the booster. Remember, it has to go to the additional circle, gets 15k, and then you pop out the Chimera, drive check. Then it's important to do this first because you'll have to CB for Honoly, and then this will actually Soul Blast something and then shove something out. Let's say this to countercharge. So this is the 7th attack, and then the last attack as well, and then you pay CB. This is 11, 26 plus 25, 51. If you have an extra CB, you can definitely take advantage of misdirection copies that you have in Soul as well. Another option is Leontina. It doesn't matter what bodies you have because it'll shove everything into Soul. So instead of like a dust turn, you want to do as many rearguards prior just to maximize on all of them because she'll actually shove everything into Soul regardless anyway. So that's already like 5 attacks. So on the 6th attack, and remember each attack is plus 40k in this example, or even less, but it's still decent power up. Use her skill. You shove everything into Soul, and then for each card you put into Soul, you call twice as much as you can. So I did the whole field. I'm just gonna call full board. It doesn't necessarily matter what you call, but as long as you have 4 different grades, which we do 0, 1, 2, and 3. So 4 different grades. Your opponent has to guard with 2 cards, and so if they already still are surviving up to this point, any drive checks apply and literally attack the weakest. And Nightmare Doll Alice, Soul Blast, put it back. Purple Trapezes again. Call it over here, shove this into Soul, call it here. Then since you have another misdirection, you can call here and it sees it, so it pulls out and repeat the cycle. Doesn't matter. Comicality, Chimera, Soul Blast 1. If you already have Purple Trapezes, then do misdirection. Countercharge, Nightmare Doll Alice at the end of the battle. Blast, let's say this. Go back, Purple Trapezes, shove this misdirection back. Pull out Nightmare Doll Alice, pull out misdirection, and then pull out the other misdirection. And yeah, just more attacks that need 2 cards or more with a massive power up of the crest. Let's say you go into Dust. The next turn, you use all your CB, your G zone, you G guard it once more. 8 cards face up in the G zone. You don't have to do this on turn 5. You could do this on turn 4. But obviously, the bigger the crest power up, the better it is for you. So literally, everything's getting 40k. And then they're reduced. You deal damage. They're reduced to 1. This nullifies G guards essentially because your opponent's grade is grade 1, so they cannot G guard. You may be out of CB, but you can use Cat to call out Purple Trapezes, shove something else into Soul, call out Nightmare Doll Alice, and then of course any like misdirections that you have to easily build a field, and then you can call more cards if you want. Again, this is just an example field. So the weakest in this case would be this Trapezes, followed by this column. Remember, everything is plus 40. So this is 13 plus 40, so this is 53. While your opponent's at base power 1, unless they get a trigger. 13 plus 40, 53. Calamity, Chimera, Soul Blast something. If you already have a Purple Trapezes in here, you can shove a misdirection this time, since you already have one. Purple Trapezes in Soul, in countercharge. Then Nightmare Doll Alice can attack, and at the end of the battle, Soul Blast, go into Soul, pop out Purple Trapezes, shove this misdirection into Soul, pop out Nightmare Doll Alice, this comes out, and then this comes out as well. And you can attack from like the weakest, and then eventually your Vanguard can attack to get triple drive and any more power up attack. Oh yeah, pretty nasty. And this is deck profile, amigos. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed the combos too. Like a lot of work went into that. Not only figuring it out, but also like just putting that in display, editing. It's a lot of stuff going on when you're playing Pale Moon. Again, there's multiple options I listed that you can try out for yourself. I definitely encourage you. As I'm learning to play more and more about this clan, I'm learning more things as well. It's kind of like Granblue too. Like you learn more interactions the more you play it too. And even to this day, sometimes I learn Granblue interactions that really don't are obvious, and so you learn little things from every game that you play essentially too. And I've been playing Granblue since like 2015 as well. It's been almost 10 years. So as mentioned, some of the key things you want to consider is the Honoly and Kano. I mentioned the play that you can play through Honoly a bit, still get 8 attacks. So that's another weakness that Harri could go into, is that it has to deal with Honoly, but you can practice against that and still get the most out of it too. You can use Kano for yourself to help protect your rearguard. So this helps protect against your Alice, your Purple Trapezes, or your Chimera grade 3 that you're trying to like wombo combo to. So that's another card to consider. And compare it to Granblue, because everybody, compares it because they come out as pairs too. And me naturally being a Granblue player, I've realized with going into Neonactor with Musketeers and now into Harri with Pale Moon, reminding me that Granblue is blessed to begin what it has. Literally, you go through hoops to do what Granblue does pretty easily, like Negro Lily, Beatrice, and do whatever you need to do and get what you need to do. Pale Moon does not have Obadiah, for example, so you can't just selectively 5 cards and put them into Soul. That'd be fantastic. So do I feel one is better? At the end of the day, play what you want to play and enjoy yourself too. This deck is really good too. I've considered this as an option, just as another tool in my toolbox that I can bring to a BCS or a shop challenge and have fun and also like do well. I am biased with Granblue, so of course, naturally, Granblue will be like my #1 pick essentially. But the one thing that Harri does really well compared to Granblue is that once you reach your turn 4, you scale really harder. Not only because of the Crest power, but because of the Excel circles. You can literally just drop basic cards, attack 4 to 5 times before you even swing with your Vanguard, and then your Vanguard can also cause more attacks later on. And then you can further loop more attacks, which you've seen in the combos too. So like this deck can just like end games that way too, and get through multiple damage check triggers. Again, also support the YouTubers and players too that I mentioned. Shout out to them as well. So again, Pale Moon content is pretty scarce. There's been stuff over the years, but that's more recent than less than 2 years. It's kind of scarce. So I appreciate more people making more content. That'd be great. Also in the comments, you could just suggest any suggestions, and that way other people, when they see this video, they can see the comments and see other suggestions that people have mentioned too. So any help is appreciated too. And I'm excited how this deck will evolve for the BCS season and see when it takes action in the English metagame next year too as well. Until the next time, amigos. Bye!